So I'm kind of coming in now, and I'm just going through a step-by-step process of something that I've already been able to accomplish. So I'm just recounting the steps of that process. And in that process, it began also with me realizing again that every time the sun is coming up in the morning, something is happening inside of my body. So that there's literally a connection for real with me and the sun. And if I'm just there and I get into a certain stage, I just go into this energetic field and this experience, and it will happen every single time as long as I'm present and available for it and not overspent or, whatever, just making sure that I'm balanced enough to catch that wave. And then all the experiences that I've also had with the sun on journeys and looking at the sun and seeing it's really far beyond comprehension. And you can already tell that everything that is in the reality is somehow being sprayed from the sun. And so as I was finalizing some of my notes, I came across this in the, this is the spiritual AI thing, right? It's just a data set of all the metaphysical data and books. By the way, I am actually for real moving forward with actually implementing this as utility inside of the platform and seeing if I can get some of these authors on board to actually start a very small membership plan, but just having access to the data set and then just being encouraged to buy the books or whatever if you like them. But there's something very, because the spiritual knowledge is very vast, but it's like the DNA written out, basically. If you can get true spiritual knowledge, it's the DNA written out. And if you can get a true enough story, then you can actually figure out certain components. But there's so many components to this. You would literally need to know what components you're actually looking for. And tonight, what we're looking for is actually the components of the key to actually getting out of what you would think reality is and whether or not a key could potentially exist. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this very quickly and explain a few things. I'm going to actually start here. In Egyptian mythology, Horus was likewise bitten in the heel by a serpent and is associated with these other myths. In the Egyptian mythology, Horus's right eye was identified with the sun god Ra and was known as the eye of Ra, whereas his left eye was identified with the moon and was known as the eye of Horus. Okay, now the thing that makes that very confusing right off is because we're talking about the eye of Horus, and then it's saying that his right eye is the eye of Ra, or excuse me, his right eye is the eye of Ra, and his left eye is his own eye. Okay. And the reason why I really thought that was right on point with what I wanted to build into this evening is that, so they're identifying that basically one eye then is the sun and the other eye is the moon. And that's that's symbolism. That's not like, that would look dope as an image, but I'm just saying they're saying something here that you need to understand what is the difference between an eye of a sun and an eye of a moon. And right off, it's easy to see that one eye is about the future and one eye is about the past, or the ability to send energy. Like, how when you're remembering something right now, like when you're recalling something, you're sending a beam of what would be like a dark light. It's like an infrared to connect to what the past is from a memory bank level. And then you retrieve that data and you bring it to yourself right now through time, as we're calling it. And that's the power of that eye, the moon eye. While the sun eye actually has another power. And these are always not as dualistic as you think. Like, okay, so that means the other one does the opposite, because you would be adding to the story on your own with that. You need to understand just totally what you're in, and that it's not really a binary kind of good or bad thing, because you wouldn't really understand its complete makeup. Definitely not be able to ever utilize it if you didn't go beyond all of that. You can definitely understand why there is anything you can think of as far as information around something like this, whether it's good or whether it's bad, because we're talking about very powerful components. Let's look at this then, this explanation of them talking about these powerful eyes as being this eye of the sun and this eye of the moon, or the ability to actually pull data from these two respective sources, and them being so deep that you can't say that just the eye of the sun just sees the future. It actually is the future. It is everything that's going to happen. You can't just say that the eye of the past just reads old memories. Like, there's a lot of old, deep stuff. Like, I was watching this documentary today about these meteorites. And, you know, they had them all under the microscope, and they were talking about these supersymmetry and all this stuff going on with these meteorites. But they're like so small, they just land anywhere. Cosmic dust for real. And it's just like, it's again, incredible to, as the guy was saying, like, if you rub this between your fingers, you're touching the oldest thing. That's the first time something that old has been touched. And so that's what I'm saying. They got these big old meteorites in these rooms, right? And they're all in like glass cases, like hands off, right? But you just like, this is the experience inside of the reality, but the reality is still only what you can imagine. So I want to keep going here. So this, So I wanted to, again, because I've just revealed this symbolism here. And by the way, this is coming from the Day of the Fish, as you know, which is Shannon Dory's work, you know, excellent work, you know, it's so much in these works. That's why I put them in almost as encyclopedias themselves, to go back or forward and refresh the database and realize, again, who were we talking about? And let's align it again for how we create a key to actually getting outside of, again, what we're calling consciousness. So it goes on and it says that in the Dogan religion, the Nomo, who were identified with the sun in the number 4, let me jump in here real quick, were always represented on the right side of the sanctuary. So that's like the right eye again. The jackal, who was identified with the earth, the moon in the number 3, was always represented on the left side of the sanctuary. Okay. And that's what I was mentioning before about Earth in itself not necessarily being the female planet, that the females have their own planet and it is still in control by the females that are there, versus the world kind of more being built. And I'm going to show why. And this is the world that we're talking about right now, that we're existing in, right? But we exist in multiple worlds. But you got to understand, well, how did you get to this world though? Because that's most people's questions. Like, how did I get here? So it says, again, in the Dogan religion, the Nomo, who were identified with the sun and the number 4, were always represented on the right side of the sanctuary. The jackal, who was identified with the earth and the moon and the number 3, was always represented on the left side of the sanctuary. Together, the symbols or numbers form with the 7th ancestor, which identified the mistress of speech and the perfection of the combination of the Nomo and the human. To me, that statement right there gives you the version number of humanity. We're at, let's say in this context, 7.0, where the experiment between the combination of the Nomo and the human being has now been perfect. Okay, so that to me is like the version of human beings you're dealing with. And this means this particular body, this id, right? The thing that you're talking to when you're giving it inspiration. This would indicate that Horus, through the symbolism associated with his eyes, represents the Egyptian version of the 7th ancestor or the mistress of speech. In the Egyptian myths, after Seth tore out Horus's left eye, Thoth restored it. Okay, now we've already gone through Thoth and Hermes and his many exploits, or its many exploits, what thrice born really means, and that every god in the Matrix is pretty much Hermes. And that this energy itself is very real. It's more of like an eidolon. It's also ranks in with the trickster gods, if you may, which is actually in all traditions. The peyote, the ancient peyote traditions also have a trickster god mythos. Many have seen the Joker before, or Joker fractal energies on when they go into any kind of higher vibration or any kind of third eye experiences, because generally when you first go through a third eye experience, you're turning on your root chakra. And for males especially, their root chakra is inverted, which is the Joker itself. And generally you come in contact with somewhat like a sinister kind of trickster kind of energy that seems to be kind of taunting you, right? And that's the guardian of the threshold, or the first root chakra inverted, the hanged man, also known as the fool, right? Which is Odin. Okay. So it's talking about a certain process that goes on first. So it says in this process, right, that Thoth, who's kind of like still the trickster of the whole thing, replaces an eye of, again, the perfect version or seventh ancestor, that the eye gets replaced. And to me, this is the key. This is like, if you let this slip, you'd never realize where we're at and what's really going on, because you wouldn't realize that the reality that you're actually perceiving now is being perceived from the eye that Thoth restored. Now, watch what it says. So the value of a fraction was assigned to each individual part of this eye, which Set had torn up. The total fraction corresponding to the restoration of the whole eye should have been 64 by 64. After the restoration of the eye, the total of the 6 fractions used resulted in only 63 by 64. It was assumed that Thoth had withheld the missing 1/64th by magic. Now, to me, this is, again, it's not about having all the knowledge. It's just about having the balanced knowledge, because it could be missed, this part right here, that Thoth withheld the missing 1/64 by magic. To me now, magic, that the magic they're talking about is law. And we'll explain that more next Tri Vibes Digest, but we've already start dialing into that. But you're going to see why law is magic. That's why they call it, hey, we're going to give them a sentence. Here's a spell, here's the curse, here's the edict, here's the oath, so all those are actually legal terms, right? So look at what's being said. Now, let me just jump in here really briefly, 1 second. Give me 1 quick second here. There we are. Okay. Okay. So we should also be very clear, not to overdo it, because, sometimes, I just would advise that if you're ever ciphering something for someone or decoding something for someone, that you really just stick to the most obvious hard-coded stuff. Like, you don't got to stretch it. Because then when you start stretching it, people be looking at you like, wait a minute. You know how somebody like, yo, and then it's cat. And then cat is the number 5. And then that 5 went around the moon, but it's really Venus. And then Venus traces out the 5 in the sky. But then the word sky really, and it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 no. Like, wait a minute. Let's just take that step by step. Also, I will let y'all know, the energy's a little hot in here. Smile. Like, throw your hands out. Like, this is the entertainment. Like, look. Hold on, man. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Let me just stop for a moment. Time out. Okay.